Forget strategy for a moment. Forget the spreadsheets, the data, the perfect branding decks, because none of it matters. Not really. When your emotions are steering the ship, every business decision, every negotiation, every late-night choice that shapes your company's future starts in one place, your mind, and more precisely, in the invisible undercurrents of your emotions. Most entrepreneurs think they make logical decisions. They believe they're driven by data, analytics, and common sense. But beneath the surface, something else is at play, something quieter, older, and infinitely more powerful. It's emotion, fear, pride, insecurity, desire, the hidden puppeteers, pulling the strings behind every rational move. You might not realize it, but emotion decides before logic speaks. It decides whether you invest or hesitate, whether you fire or forgive, whether you push through or quit too soon. And the truth is, your emotions can be your greatest asset, or your silent saboteurs. If you can learn to see them, understand them, and master them, you don't just become a better leader, you become unstoppable, clear, sharp, decisive, because clarity isn't found in doing more. It's found in feeling less chaos. And that's what this journey is about. Over the next 10 chapters, we'll decode the emotional architecture of your decision-making. We'll strip away the fog of impulsive reactions, self-doubt, and overthinking, and replace them with clarity, calm, and conviction. By the end, you won't just understand your emotional triggers, you'll command them. You'll see exactly how to turn emotional volatility into laser-focused leadership. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Silent Saboteurs. How emotions cloud your business judgment. Every entrepreneur begins with vision, but somewhere between ambition and execution, something gets lost, not because of bad strategy, but because of emotional interference. You know that feeling. When one email ruins your morning, when one delayed payment derails your entire focus, when one client's criticism feels like an attack, not feedback. That's not logic reacting, that's emotion, and it's running the show. The first truth about emotional mastery is this: you can't manage what you can't see, and most business leaders never see how deeply their emotions infiltrate their decisions. Fear of failure hides behind careful planning. Imposter syndrome disguises itself as attention to detail. Anger shows up as passion. And ego, oh ego, wears 1,000 perfect masks. The cost of these silent saboteurs? A foggy mind, poor timing, missed opportunities that logic could have seen if emotion hadn't clouded the lens. You see, business clarity isn't destroyed by chaos, it's destroyed by emotional noise, that quiet, internal static that drowns out reason and whispers, "What if you're not good enough?" Let's take a closer look. You've spent weeks preparing for a client pitch. You know your numbers, your story, your worth. But just before the call, fear creeps in. What if they say no? What if they think it's too expensive? So you discount your offer. You undersell your value, not because it's bad strategy, but because it's emotional survival. And the deal? It doesn't fall apart because of numbers. It falls apart because of energy. Because confidence speaks louder than logic, and the client could feel your hesitation. That's how emotion clouds business judgment. Not dramatically, but subtly, in the micro-decisions that compound over time. Think about this. How many entrepreneurs burn out? Not because their business failed, but because their emotional endurance did. How many leaders misinterpret feedback as rejection? How many decisions are made from panic, pride, or revenge instead of clarity? Fear, frustration, and fatigue, they're like smoke filling the room. The more it builds, the less you can see. And when you can't see, you don't decide, you react. That's why emotional triggers are so dangerous. They don't shout, they whisper. They disguise themselves as intuition, but they're really unresolved patterns from the past. A partner who reminds you of someone who betrayed you. A negotiation that echoes an old insecurity. A delay that reactivates your childhood fear of not being enough. You think you're making a business call, but your nervous system is reliving history. So here's the paradox. To lead with logic, you must first lead your emotions. You can't eliminate them, but you can train them. Start by noticing your patterns. When do you tense up? When do you lose patience? What topics trigger defensiveness or fear? Those are your emotional fingerprints, unique but predictable. And once you recognize them, they lose their power. Because awareness breaks the illusion. When you can name the emotion, you can separate it from the decision. The best entrepreneurs in the world, the calm negotiators, the clear communicators, the strategic visionaries, they all have one thing in common: emotional literacy. They can read their emotions like data. They don't suppress them. They analyze them. Because emotion, when mastered, becomes information. Fear becomes a signal for preparation. Anger becomes a compass for boundaries. Frustration becomes a teacher of patience. That's how emotional clarity begins, not by rejecting emotion, but by decoding it. So, pause for a second. Think about your last bad business day. What really caused it? The client's tone, the missed deal, or the story your mind told about what it meant? That's the key. Events don't define your clarity. Your interpretation does. And until you master that, emotion will keep hijacking your logic. But here's the good news. Clarity isn't built in silence. It's built in awareness. And every time you recognize an emotional trigger, you regain a piece of power. This is the first step, unmasking the saboteurs within. Because before you can master your emotions, you have to see them. Chapter 2. Decoding your emotional blueprint. The triggers to watch for. Every emotion you experience in business, every rush of excitement, every flicker of anxiety, every stab of doubt, isn't random. It's part of a pattern, a blueprint, quietly written across your nervous system long before your first client call, long before your first business pitch. Your emotional blueprint is the invisible map that determines how you respond under pressure, how you negotiate, how you lead, and even how you self-sabotage. It's not logic, it's memory, shaped by years of conditioning, experiences, and beliefs you never stopped to question. And the most successful entrepreneurs, the calm, grounded, unshakable ones, they've learned to read that map, not to erase it, but to understand it. Because what you understand, you can manage. And what you manage, you can master. Think of a moment when you felt triggered in business. Maybe someone questioned your idea during a meeting, or a partner delayed a project that you poured your heart into. You felt it, that flash of frustration, that tightening in your chest, that impulse to react before thinking. That right there is your emotional blueprint in action. Your body reacted before your brain did, because emotions always move faster than logic. Your physiology, your heart rate, your breath, your tension speaks the language of emotion fluently, while your mind struggles to keep up. You think, why am I so upset? It's just a delay. But beneath that thought, a deeper story plays out. I'm not being respected. I'm not in control. I'm failing. That story isn't about today. It's about what your mind learned long ago. It's about the first time you were ignored. The first time effort didn't equal reward. The first time, not now, felt like rejection. And those old imprints, they're still running the show. When you start a business, you don't just bring your skills, you bring your scars. You bring your fears, your doubts, your hunger to prove something. And those things silently shape your decisions, your pace, your relationships. This is why two entrepreneurs can face the same obstacle and respond completely differently. One sees rejection as feedback, the other sees it as proof they're not good enough. The situation is identical. The trigger is different, because the emotional blueprint doesn't just define what you feel. It defines what you believe about what you feel. So, what are your triggers? They often hide in plain sight, disguised as normal stress. But if you slow down and pay attention, you'll start to see patterns. For some, it's criticism. That one comment on your idea that makes your entire body tighten. For others, it's uncertainty, the moments when things feel out of control, and suddenly the mind spirals into panic. For many, it's comparison, seeing someone else succeed and feeling somehow like you're falling behind. Every trigger points to an emotional wound. Every wound points to a story that still defines you. And until you rewrite that story, it will keep repeating. Through new clients, new projects, new investors, same emotion, different name. Let's take a closer look at the physiological side, because understanding what happens in your body is the fastest way to reclaim control. When you're triggered, your brain's amygdala, the part responsible for emotional reactions, fires first. It floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes. Your breath shortens. Blood rushes away from your prefrontal cortex, the rational, decision-making center. In other words, you become less intelligent when you're emotionally reactive. That's not an insult. It's neuroscience. Your body enters survival mode, not strategy mode. And in that moment, your business decisions are being made by your emotions, not your expertise. Now here's the hard truth most entrepreneurs never face. Your biggest business mistakes aren't made in spreadsheets or meetings. They're made in emotional blind spots. The deal you walked away from too soon because you felt disrespected. The project you overcommitted to because you couldn't say no. The conversation you avoided because you didn't want to feel uncomfortable. All emotional, all avoidable. If you could see the pattern as it happens, here's how you start decoding it. First, awareness before analysis. The next time you feel an emotional shift, tension, frustration, anxiety, don't judge it, just observe it. Pause. Ask yourself, what exactly triggered me right now? Was it the tone, the delay, the fear of looking incompetent? Naming the emotion is like turning on the light in a dark room. The shadows disappear the moment you look at them directly. Second, track your emotional hotspots. Keep a simple log, not of your work, but of your reactions. Note when your mood shifts during business hours. You'll start to see patterns. Certain people, certain emails, certain times of day. Those aren't coincidences, they're your emotional fingerprints. Third, distinguish between instinct and emotion. Instinct is neutral and grounded. It feels calm, immediate, and clear. Emotion is charged, fast, and loud. Instinct says, wait, this deal doesn't align. Emotion says, they'll regret not choosing me. Learn to hear the difference. And your clarity will multiply overnight. The great irony of business is that we often outsource clarity to data, systems, and strategy, yet the fog usually comes from within. We think we're analyzing the market, but really, we're wrestling our own fears. We think we're managing people, but we're managing projections of our insecurities. The goal isn't to eliminate emotion, it's to evolve it, to transform raw emotion into refined awareness. When you can feel without being ruled by what you feel, you step into mastery. That's when emotional triggers lose their grip and you start leading from clarity, not chaos. So here's your challenge. For the next few days, observe yourself like a scientist observing a storm. When do the winds pick up? What triggers the thunder? And how long until the calm returns? Because the better you understand your internal weather, the better you can forecast your reactions. And that is emotional intelligence in its purest form. Your triggers aren't weaknesses, they're windows. Windows into the beliefs, fears, and needs that drive your every move. Look through them long enough, and you'll find not chaos, but truth. And that truth is where business clarity begins. Chapter 3. The Clarity Compass. Tools for Emotional Detachment. When the storm of emotion hits, and it will, clarity doesn't come from fighting the storm. It comes from standing still within it. That's what emotional detachment truly means. Not coldness, not indifference, but composure. The quiet power to see clearly while the world trembles around you. And here's the truth. Most people never understand. Emotional detachment isn't suppression. It's mastery. It's choosing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It's the difference between reacting impulsively and responding intelligently. Because business, like life, will constantly test your emotional balance. A delayed payment, a rude client, a project falling apart after months of effort. These aren't random misfortunes. They're training grounds. Each one asks a silent question. Can you remain centered when the world pulls you off balance? Most entrepreneurs make a dangerous mistake. They confuse emotional control with emotional denial. They tell themselves, I'm fine, while their mind is quietly burning beneath the surface. They smile on the outside, while their nervous system screams inside. But pretending to be calm is not the same as being calm. Real detachment isn't pretending not to care, it's caring precisely enough. It's responding from truth, not tension. And to do that, you need a compass, a framework to return to when your emotions threaten to take the wheel. Let's build that compass, piece by piece. Awareness, the north point. Awareness is where clarity begins. You can't master what you can't see. You can't detach from what you haven't identified. Every time emotion rises, before you analyze, before you justify, name it. Say it silently. I feel frustrated. I feel dismissed. I feel anxious. That single act, naming, lowers emotional intensity by as much as 40%, according to neuroscience research. Why? Because you've shifted the emotion from the limbic system, the emotional brain, to the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain. Language grounds chaos. Awareness is your flashlight in the storm. Use it. Perspective, the east point. Once you name the emotion, zoom out. Ask yourself, is this about the present, or is this an echo from the past? Most emotional triggers aren't new, they're recycled. A colleague questioning your idea might remind your nervous system of the teacher who embarrassed you in school. A delayed response might remind you of the rejection you once felt from someone you admired. Perspective lets you see the pattern without drowning in it. You begin to realize it's not them, it's me remembering something through them. And that realization breaks emotional chains faster than any motivational quote ever could. Perspective is your sunrise. It brings light where confusion lived. Boundaries, the South Point. Emotional detachment cannot exist without boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls. They're filters. They protect your clarity, not your ego. Without them, every noise becomes a signal. Every comment becomes a wound. You start taking things personally that were never personal. A client's bad day becomes your failure. A team member's mistake becomes your identity. But with clear boundaries, you begin to differentiate between your emotional responsibility and theirs. You stop carrying the emotional baggage of others. Because the truth is, not everything requires your energy. Not every fire is yours to put out. Boundaries are your anchor. They hold you steady when everything else pulls. Neutral observation, the West Point. This is where detachment transforms into mastery. Neutral observation is the art of seeing emotion without labeling it good or bad. Most people run from discomfort, but the moment you stop running and just watch, you change your relationship with it. You realize the emotion isn't dangerous, it's just data. You start saying, "Interesting, I'm feeling fear." Not, "Oh no, I'm afraid." One creates distance, the other creates panic. When you learn to observe without judgment, you activate what monks and elite performers call equanimity, the state of mind where peace isn't dependent on conditions. That's the ultimate form of freedom. Because once you stop fearing your emotions, they stop controlling you. Now imagine you're in the middle of a business conflict. Tensions rising, voices are sharp. Your instinct is to defend, to prove your point, to win. But instead, you pause. You feel the heat in your chest. You recognize it, frustration. You trace it. This isn't about them. It's my need to be understood. You breathe, you detach, and you respond calmly, clearly, powerfully. In that moment, you don't just manage emotion, you transcend it. And the room feels it, that shift in presence, that quiet authority that doesn't shout but still commands. That's the clarity compass at work. It transforms emotional turbulence into direction. Practicing the compass starts small. Next time you face a trigger, pause before reacting. Run through the compass. North, what am I feeling? East, where does it come from? South, is this mine to carry? West, can I observe this without judgment? This four-step check-in takes less than 60 seconds, but those 60 seconds can save you from days of regret or confusion. They turn reactivity into awareness, and awareness into clarity. Over time, your nervous system adapts. You stop being hijacked by emotion. You begin to notice the space between what happens and how you respond. And that space, that quiet pause, is where your power lives. Remember, emotional detachment isn't the absence of feeling, it's the presence of wisdom. It's learning to feel deeply but act deliberately, to sense the waves but steer the ship. When you master detachment, you stop being at the mercy of business chaos. You become the eye of the storm, calm, centered, unshaken. And that's when your clarity becomes unstoppable. Not because life got easier, but because you got clearer. Chapter 4. Emotional Alchemy. Turning Triggers into Strategic Power. There's a moment, subtle but unmistakable, when emotion shifts from something that controls you to something that empowers you. That's the moment you become an alchemist of your own mind. Emotional alchemy isn't about suppressing or avoiding your triggers. It's about transforming them. It's the art of turning emotional chaos into strategic clarity, of taking what once made you reactive and using it to make you precise, powerful, and deeply aware. Every entrepreneur faces emotional triggers, but few ever realize those triggers aren't obstacles. They're indicators. They reveal where your power is waiting to be refined. Because here's the truth. Emotions don't block clarity. Unprocessed emotions do. And the moment you learn to decode them, your triggers stop being your downfall. They become your compass. Step 1. Awareness. Naming the fire. Every emotional reaction begins with a spark. Someone questions your idea. A deal falls through. An employee underperforms. The mind reacts before reason catches up. Tension floods your body. Your breath shortens. Your thoughts spiral. That's the fire. But here's where alchemy begins. Instead of fighting the fire, observe it, name it. Labeling emotion pulls it out of the subconscious and into the conscious. I'm feeling threatened. I'm feeling overlooked. I'm feeling pressured. This naming doesn't make you weak. It makes you a scientist of your own psychology. You can't transform what you can't define. Every emotion you name loses a little of its grip because awareness is the first transmutation, chaos into comprehension. Step 2. Interpretation. Reading the message beneath the flame. Emotions are messengers. Every trigger is a coded signal, carrying information about what matters most to you. Anger often hides a boundary that's been crossed. Anxiety signals uncertainty or lack of control. Jealousy points toward an unmet desire or comparison. Guilt reveals values you may have betrayed, consciously or not. Instead of labeling these emotions as bad, start asking, what is this emotion trying to show me? For instance, if you feel defensive in a business discussion, it might mean your sense of competence feels threatened. That awareness helps you communicate differently, not from ego, but from clarity. When you see emotion as data, you stop drowning in it. You start decoding it. And from decoding comes direction. Step 3. Transformation. Reframing the energy. Now that you've named the fire and decoded the message, it's time to use the heat. This is the true act of emotional alchemy, converting reaction into resource. Let's say frustration arises. Instead of letting it spiral into impatience, you channel it into focus. You tell yourself, this frustration means I care. Let's turn that energy into action. Or when fear appears, instead of running from it, you reinterpret it. This fear is alertness. It's preparing me to perform. The shift doesn't come from denial, but from redirection. Every emotion has energy. Energy, by definition, cannot be destroyed, only transformed. The greatest leaders and creators are not emotionless. They're emotionally transcendent. They turn their inner storms into wind for their sails. Step 4. Integration, building emotional memory. Emotional alchemy becomes powerful only when practiced repeatedly. Each time you transform a trigger, you're rewiring your emotional circuitry. You're teaching your nervous system that discomfort doesn't equal danger. It equals data. Over time, your tolerance expands. What once overwhelmed you becomes fuel. You begin to operate from calm confidence, not forced calm, but earned composure. You'll start noticing patterns. The same situation that used to upset you now challenges you differently. The same criticism that once stung now informs your next improvement. This is the mark of integration. when the emotional lesson becomes part of your natural response. The key? Reflection. After each emotionally charged moment, take 3 minutes to ask yourself, what did I feel? What triggered it? How did I respond? What could I have done differently? That reflection turns experience into evolution. Step 5. Application. Using emotional intelligence strategically. When you can master emotional alchemy, you gain a new kind of intelligence, one that moves faster than logic, but deeper than instinct. Here's how it plays out in business. You walk into a tense meeting. You sense the mood, anxious, uncertain. Instead of absorbing that anxiety, you stabilize it. Your calm becomes contagious. You listen, not just to words, but to tone, hesitation, energy. You notice the subtle shifts others miss. You speak less, but everything you say lands with precision. That's emotional alchemy in motion. Your ability to stay composed doesn't just protect you, it influences the entire emotional climate of your environment. You become the one people trust when things fall apart. Because you don't mirror chaos, you recalibrate it. Step 6. The shadow of suppression. There's one warning every emotional alchemist must heed. Suppression, masquerading as mastery. When you numb yourself to pain, you don't transcend it, you delay it. Suppressed emotion doesn't vanish. It stores itself in your body, waiting for the next moment of vulnerability to surface. So don't bypass your emotions. Process them. Feel them consciously, then release them deliberately. Authentic mastery requires presence, not pretense. The goal isn't to stop feeling, it's to feel wisely. Step 7. The business power of emotional alchemy. Here's what happens when you consistently practice this transformation. Your decision-making becomes sharper. Your creativity expands because your mind isn't clouded by reaction. Your relationships deepen because people feel emotionally safe around your stability. You begin to navigate business like a strategist, not a reactor. Your mind stops oscillating between doubt and impulse. Instead, you live in a state of poised power, aware, grounded, yet adaptive. This is the ultimate benefit of mastering your emotional triggers, clarity that endures even in chaos. It's not the absence of uncertainty, but the ability to think clearly within it. A final thought. Think of your emotions as raw material, unrefined gold. The heat, the intensity, the friction, that's the forge of mastery. When you step into emotional alchemy, you stop being a prisoner of your triggers. You become a craftsman, shaping your reactions into responses, your chaos into clarity, your fear into focus. And from that transformation, you lead not just with intelligence, but with presence. Because in the end, clarity isn't the absence of emotion. It's the wisdom to let emotions serve you, not sabotage you. Chapter 5. Building Emotional Fortitude, Resilience in Business. Every business story has moments of triumph and moments of collapse. What separates the unstoppable from the defeated isn't intelligence, luck, or strategy. It's resilience. Resilience isn't the absence of emotion. It's the ability to stay centered through emotion. It's the quiet, unshakable strength that allows you to move forward even when everything inside you is screaming to stop. Because business will, like life, doesn't test your knowledge first. It tests your emotional durability. There's a myth that strong people don't feel, that the most successful entrepreneurs are stone-faced, stoic machines immune to stress or fear. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The most resilient leaders feel everything. They just don't break because of it. They bend, they adjust, they learn, but they don't collapse. Resilience isn't built in comfort. It's forged in chaos. When your plans fail, your confidence wavers, and you have to rebuild from what's left, not what you hoped for. Think back to your last major setback. Maybe it was a project that fell apart, a client that walked away, a pitch that didn't land. In that moment, your mind probably whispered, maybe this isn't for you. That's the voice of fragility, the mind's reflex to protect you from pain by retreating from progress. But emotional fortitude whispers something else. Stay, learn, adjust. Because emotional strength isn't about being fearless. It's about being fear-informed. It's about letting fear educate you without letting it dominate you. So, how do you build it? How do you become unshakable, even when life and business seem designed to knock you off balance? It begins with self-awareness, evolves with self-regulation, and matures into self-trust. Let's break that down. 1. Self-awareness, the mirror of resilience. You can't regulate what you don't recognize. Every emotional reaction has roots: frustration, fear, fatigue, pride, anxiety. Self-awareness isn't about over-analyzing every thought. It's about noticing, catching your emotional state before it hijacks your decisions. When stress builds, most people push harder. They double down, grind through, and ignore their inner signals. But awareness says, pause. What's really happening here? Are you angry because your team failed, or because your expectations weren't communicated? Are you anxious because the deal might fail, or because you tied your self-worth to its success? Self-awareness transforms emotion from an invisible force into usable data. And when you can see your emotional patterns clearly, resilience becomes a conscious skill, not a random accident. 2. Self-regulation, the art of emotional discipline. Once you see your triggers, the next step is mastering your response window, that small space between emotion and action. In that space lies all your power. That's where composure is built. That's where maturity grows. Every time you choose to respond, rather than react, you reinforce your emotional muscle. And like any muscle, it grows through resistance. You don't become emotionally disciplined by avoiding difficulty. You become disciplined by facing it, calmly, repeatedly, intentionally. Self-regulation doesn't mean you suppress emotion. It means you channel it. You learn to breathe through the moment, delay the impulsive reaction, and choose the strategic one. That's what separates emotional amateurs from emotional architects. 3. Self-trust, the foundation of fortitude. Resilience isn't about control. It's about confidence. The kind of confidence that comes from knowing, whatever happens, I'll handle it. You don't need certainty when you have self-trust, because trust gives you internal stability even when the external world feels unstable. Think of the entrepreneurs who've lost millions and built it back, the leaders who were doubted, rejected, and still found a way to thrive. What do they all share? Unshakable self-trust. It's not arrogance, it's alignment, a deep knowing that even if everything burns down, they'll rebuild with better fire. And that kind of confidence only comes from surviving storms, not avoiding them. Resilience in motion. Applying it to business. When you build emotional fortitude, it changes the way you lead, decide, and connect. You stop panicking over short-term losses because you understand long-term cycles. You stop taking criticism personally because you recognize it as data, not a verdict. You stop burning out because you've learned to refuel before depletion, not after collapse. In moments of crisis, you don't react. You recalibrate. You look at chaos and say, okay, what's the opportunity here? That mindset is magnetic. Teams follow leaders who remain grounded in turbulence, not because they have all the answers, but because they create emotional safety through presence. And in that presence, clarity thrives. Emotional fortitude and burnout prevention, one of the biggest threats to emotional strength isn't failure. It's exhaustion. Burnout happens when your emotional energy is constantly spent without renewal. Resilience, however, isn't just endurance, it's balance. You can't think clearly when you're chronically depleted. You can't make wise decisions when you're emotionally numb. The strongest leaders prioritize recovery as much as they prioritize progress. They schedule silence, solitude, and stillness, not as luxuries, but as maintenance. Because emotional fortitude isn't a one-time achievement. It's a rhythm. Exert, recover, grow. Push, pause, reflect. That's how you sustain clarity in a world that constantly demands more. Building emotional habits for the long game. Every day, you can train your emotional resilience. Just like a muscle, it's not grand gestures, it's small, consistent practices. Begin your mornings with a few minutes of emotional check-in. Reflect on one thing that tested your patience today and how you handled it. Celebrate moments you stayed calm when you could have reacted. End your day with gratitude, not just for wins, but for lessons. These small, deliberate acts accumulate. They build emotional stamina. They reprogram your nervous system to handle stress with strength, not surrender. From fragility to flow, the ultimate goal of emotional fortitude isn't just surviving challenges, it's flowing through them. When you reach that level, emotion doesn't disrupt your clarity, it enhances it. You sense shifts earlier, respond faster, recover stronger. You lead not from reactivity, but from rhythm. You become a calm storm, powerful, directed, yet deeply at peace within. And that's when business stops being chaos management and starts becoming conscious creation. Final reflection. Emotional fortitude doesn't make life easier, it makes you stronger. It doesn't promise control, it promises capacity. And that capacity is what allows you to build, lead, and create sustainably. The world doesn't need more emotionally reactive leaders. It needs grounded ones, people who can navigate complexity with grace, precision, and empathy. So, the next time you feel yourself slipping under pressure, remember, this is the moment you're being trained, not tested. The emotion you're feeling isn't a weakness, it's a weight, meant to strengthen the muscle of your mind. And when you master that, you don't just gain clarity in business, you gain peace in yourself. Chapter 6: Unstoppable Momentum, the Future of Emotionally Intelligent Business. Momentum. It's that invisible current that carries you forward when others stall. It's not just progress, it's propulsion. And in business, momentum isn't built by chance. It's engineered through emotional mastery. Because momentum is not about speed. It's about direction with energy. It's the ability to keep moving, intelligently, deliberately, emotionally centered, even when the path is uncertain. The secret to unstoppable entrepreneurs isn't that they never slow down, it's that they never stay down. Every great business story has a turning point, a moment when the founder could have quit, could have said, enough, could have blamed the world. But instead, they decided to keep moving. That decision didn't come from motivation. It came from emotional intelligence, from understanding that emotions are not walls, they're waves. And waves, when mastered, can carry you further than brute force ever could. The emotional physics of momentum in business is psychological before it's strategic. Your company moves as your emotional state moves. When you're clear, grounded, and emotionally regulated, decisions flow effortlessly. But when you're reactive, anxious, or chasing validation, everything slows down. Here's the paradox. Most entrepreneurs try to fix their business problems before fixing their emotional patterns. They change their marketing strategy, hire new staff, pivot their products, but never confront the subtle emotional habits that keep them spinning in circles. Momentum begins when you shift that focus inward. You can't maintain forward energy when you're emotionally entangled in fear, doubt, or ego. Those states act like gravity, invisible but heavy. They keep you orbiting the same patterns of hesitation and reactivity. To break that gravity, you need emotional detachment, not from your goals, but from your fears about them. When you no longer attach your worth to outcomes, you stop resisting the process. You stop oscillating between overdrive and burnout. You begin to flow. The energy of clarity, momentum doesn't come from doing more. It comes from knowing what matters most. Clarity creates speed. When you're emotionally aligned, you stop wasting energy on noise, people's opinions, insecurities, doubts, competition. You start channeling energy toward movement that compounds. Most business stagnation isn't due to lack of resources, it's due to emotional confusion. People spend their power fighting invisible battles, the fear of being misunderstood, the guilt of outgrowing others, the anxiety of not being ready. But once you master emotional triggers, clarity becomes self-sustaining. You stop reacting and start directing. You shift from "what should I do next" to "what must I become next." That's the essence of unstoppable momentum. Emotional recalibration, the secret reset button. Every high performer eventually hits emotional fatigue. The danger isn't the fatigue itself, it's failing to notice it early. Momentum isn't about never stopping. It's about knowing how to stop wisely. You see, emotional recalibration is an art. It's learning to pause not from exhaustion, but from awareness, to rest, not quit, to reflect, not retreat. True momentum thrives in cycles. Push, pause, realign. The pause doesn't break your rhythm, it maintains it. Because rest is not the opposite of progress, it's the oxygen of it. The power of emotional adaptability. The future belongs to emotionally adaptive leaders, people who can evolve faster than circumstances. In the next decade, the business landscape will shift faster than ever. Automation, AI, decentralization, and new economies of attention. But no matter how fast the tools change, one skill will remain timeless: emotional intelligence. Adaptability isn't about changing who you are. It's about remaining emotionally stable as everything else changes. Those who master adaptability know how to pivot without panic. They move with calm urgency, never rushed, never rigid, because adaptability at its core is emotional flexibility. It's the ability to experience disruption and still say, "This is information, not intimidation." Harnessing emotional momentum in teams. Momentum doesn't exist in isolation. Your emotional tone becomes your company's atmosphere. When a leader walks in with calm conviction, teams synchronize to that frequency. When a leader walks in emotionally chaotic, the entire culture vibrates with uncertainty. People don't follow titles, they follow emotional states. And in business, emotions are contagious currencies. Want a creative team? Cultivate emotional safety. Want a disciplined team? Model emotional consistency. Want a loyal team? Lead with emotional empathy. Your energy is the silent KPI of leadership, and momentum expands where emotional trust exists. Emotional integrity and long-term power. There's a hidden cost to chasing success without emotional integrity. Disconnection. You can achieve the world and still feel hollow if your progress is emotionally misaligned. Because momentum without meaning eventually becomes motion without direction. Integrity isn't just about honesty, it's about alignment. It's ensuring that what you build externally reflects who you are internally. The future of emotionally intelligent business isn't about more hustle, it's about deeper harmony between strategy and spirit, profit and purpose. When those align, your growth stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like expression. From resistance to resonance. Unstoppable momentum happens when resistance turns into resonance, when the energy you once used to fight your fears becomes the energy you use to fulfill your vision. Emotionally intelligent leaders no longer run from discomfort. They study it. They extract wisdom from it. They use it as emotional fuel. The very thing that once triggered them now trains them. The chaos that once scattered them now centers them. The uncertainty that once frightened them now focuses them. Because they've learned, momentum isn't external, it's energetic. It begins the moment you stop reacting to emotion and start orchestrating it. The future is emotional mastery. As business becomes more automated, human emotional depth becomes the ultimate differentiator. AI can predict trends, automate workflows, and analyze data, but it cannot empathize. It cannot inspire trust, lead through crisis, or create emotional connection. That remains your superpower. The future of leadership isn't about who has the best strategy. It's about who can remain emotionally intelligent while executing it. Because when everyone else is overwhelmed by speed, you'll be guided by stillness. When others chase noise, you'll follow resonance. When others burn out, you'll rise. Calm, precise, unstoppable. That's emotional mastery in motion. That's business clarity embodied. Final reflection. Momentum is not a gift, it's a discipline. It's the reward of emotional consistency, clarity, and composure. You can't fake it. You can't buy it. You can only build it moment by moment, choice by choice. And once you have it, the world feels lighter. Decisions become simpler. Success becomes a natural consequence of emotional alignment. Because momentum is what happens when emotion serves purpose, not the other way around. So, as you move forward, remember, the future doesn't belong to those who push harder. It belongs to those who flow smarter. Stay grounded, stay aware, stay emotionally intelligent. That's how you build clarity that never fades and success that never stops. Chapter 7. Emotional Leverage, Turning Pressure into Power. Pressure, the silent sculptor of every entrepreneur. It bends some, it breaks others, but for a rare few, it refines. Pressure is not your enemy, it's your amplifier. It reveals your relationship with emotion. And once you learn how to leverage that relationship, pressure stops crushing you. It starts creating you. Every entrepreneur reaches that point, when the numbers aren't adding up, when the deadlines collide, when the phone won't stop ringing, and the silence inside feels louder than the noise outside. That's when the difference between emotional reactivity and emotional leverage becomes clear. Reactivity says, I'm overwhelmed. Leverage says, I'm being refined. The shift is subtle, but life-changing. Pressure as a mirror. Pressure doesn't invent your emotions. It exposes them. It doesn't create fear, doubt, or anger. It magnifies what was already there. It reveals where your emotional architecture is unstable. It shows you the cracks you've ignored. Every time you feel cornered, it's life showing you an emotional blind spot. And most people misread that message. They escape, distract, or overwork, missing the lesson hidden in the discomfort. But emotionally intelligent leaders do something different. They observe the pressure. They study it like data. They ask, what is this emotion trying to teach me? That single question turns chaos into clarity. Transforming emotional charge into productive energy. Every emotion carries energy. Fear, anger, frustration, they're not random storms. They're power sources, waiting for redirection. When you suppress emotion, it becomes tension. When you express it unconsciously, it becomes destruction. But when you channel it, it becomes evolution. The greatest leaders in history didn't escape their emotions. They transmuted them. Anger became discipline. Fear became preparation. Doubt became curiosity. Pressure became precision. This is emotional alchemy, turning inner chaos into strategic calm. When pressure hits, don't run from it. Ask, how can I redirect this energy toward what serves me? That question alone transforms breakdowns into breakthroughs. The biology of business pressure. Let's get scientific for a moment. When you face stress, a client loss, a cash flow dip, a delayed launch, your amygdala fires a threat signal. Your body floods with cortisol and adrenaline. Your focus narrows. Your breathing quickens. You're built to survive, not strategize. But here's the secret. The same biological response that prepares you to fight can also prepare you to perform if you master emotional regulation. Breath is your access point. Slow it. Deepen it. You tell your nervous system, we are safe. That single signal reopens the prefrontal cortex, the seat of clarity, logic, and innovation. From that state, pressure becomes information, not intimidation. Every great CEO, athlete, or leader learns this truth. The difference between panic and power is breath and awareness. Reframing pressure. The meaning you assign determines the outcome. Pressure itself isn't toxic. The story you attach to it is, and when you label pressure as punishment, you resist it. When you label it as feedback, you grow through it. Most people say, this is too much. Emotionally intelligent leaders say, this is expansion. It's not the weight that breaks you. It's how you carry it. Reframing pressure transforms emotional heaviness into emotional leverage. Because when meaning changes, energy changes. And when energy changes, performance transforms. Case study. The emotional turnaround. Think of Sarah, a young founder whose startup was on the verge of collapse. Funding delayed, team morale sinking, investors anxious. She felt the familiar signs of pressure: sleepless nights, scattered focus, short temper. But instead of reacting, she decided to document her emotions. Every morning she wrote, "What emotion is driving me today?" Within weeks, she saw the pattern: fear of failure disguised as urgency. She wasn't working from clarity, she was working from panic. Once she saw that, she reframed pressure as a teacher, a signal to slow down, realign, and lead consciously. That emotional awareness changed everything. She regained composure. Her team mirrored her calm. decisions improved, and within 3 months, the company rebounded stronger than ever. That's emotional leverage in action. The pressure paradox. How resistance creates resilience. Here's the paradox of progress. Without pressure, there's no growth. Without resistance, there's no resilience. Pressure doesn't just test you, it conditions you. Every time you operate under emotional tension and choose clarity over chaos, you upgrade your nervous system's capacity. You teach your body and mind to hold more complexity with less anxiety. That's how leaders evolve, not by avoiding difficulty, but by expanding their emotional endurance through it. The real skill isn't escaping pressure, it's expanding your tolerance for it. Using pressure as strategic feedback, emotionally intelligent entrepreneurs see pressure as data. They use it diagnostically. When you feel pressure in sales, it signals misalignment in your offer or confidence. When you feel pressure in leadership, it signals a need for clearer communication or delegation. When you feel pressure in scaling, it signals your systems or self-concept need an update. Pressure points show you where growth is required, both structurally and emotionally. They're not red flags, they're roadmaps. Learn to read them, because the better you understand your emotional data, the smarter your business decisions become. Emotional leverage rituals. To turn pressure into power, you need daily rituals that convert emotional charge into focus. Try this 3-step process. Pause. When pressure rises, stop reacting. Take 3 slow breaths. Awareness interrupts the emotional loop. Name it. Label the emotion. This is fear. This is frustration. Naming reduces intensity by 40%. The brain shifts from chaos to clarity. Redirect it. Ask, how can I use this? Turn fear into preparation, stress into structure, anxiety into action. These micro shifts create macro stability. They train your mind to see pressure not as punishment, but as potential. The clarity zone. There's a psychological state called eustress, the positive form of stress that enhances focus, motivation, and resilience. Emotionally intelligent leaders live there. They don't avoid pressure. They regulate it. They know when to step back before burnout, when to push forward with presence, and when to rest strategically. They turn stress into structure, chaos into concentration, emotion into energy. That's not luck. That's emotional leverage. Closing reflection. Pressure will never go away, but neither should your capacity to rise through it. You can't eliminate emotional tension from business, but you can master its rhythm. Every deadline, every negotiation, every crisis becomes an opportunity to practice composure. And the moment you do, you stop being controlled by emotion and start conducting it. That's when power stops being external. It becomes internal, silent, stable, unstoppable. So the next time pressure comes, don't shrink. Step in, breathe deep, leverage it, because every ounce of pressure holds the seed of your next breakthrough. And emotional mastery is how you make it grow. Chapter 8. Emotional alignment. Building businesses that feel as good as they succeed. You can build a business that looks successful and still feel completely out of sync inside. Because success, real success, isn't just what you build, it's what you feel while you're building it. We live in an age where achievement is glorified, but alignment is ignored, where the outside shines, but the inside shakes, where entrepreneurs reach milestones, but lose themselves in the process. Emotional alignment changes that. It's the silent harmony between your ambition and your inner peace, the place where progress finally feels right, the hidden burnout behind winning. Every founder has had that moment. You hit a major target. Revenue spikes. Your team celebrates. But deep down, you feel nothing. That's not lack of gratitude. It's lack of alignment. You've been sprinting toward goals designed to impress, not to fulfill. Many high performers fall into what psychologists call the achievement trap. It's the endless loop of what's next, chasing dopamine, not direction. Every win feels fleeting. Every milestone feels hollow. That's because without emotional alignment, success becomes extraction, not expansion. You extract your energy, your time, your joy, and trade it for external validation. Alignment is what flips that script. It transforms business from a grind into a flow. Alignment begins with emotional honesty. Before you can align your business with your purpose, you must align yourself with your truth. Ask yourself, why am I really doing this? Is it to prove something or to build something? Am I running toward my vision or away from my fears? These are not comfortable questions, but they are necessary ones, because honesty is the foundation of alignment. Many entrepreneurs operate from emotional camouflage, masking fear with busyness or doubt with overconfidence. But your emotions are not the enemy. They are feedback systems, guiding you back to equilibrium. If you ignore them, they distort your direction. If you listen, they refine your clarity. The resonance principle. Think of emotional alignment like resonance in music. When two frequencies match, the sound becomes richer, clearer, more powerful. Your business is an extension of your emotional frequency. If you're driven by anxiety, your leadership will carry tension. If you're fueled by purpose, your leadership will radiate peace and conviction. People don't just follow strategies, they follow states. They feel your energy before they hear your words. Alignment ensures that the energy you project matches the vision you promise. This is what makes emotionally intelligent leaders magnetic, not manipulative. They don't push people into action. They pull them through authenticity. Reconnecting to the why somewhere between scaling and surviving, most entrepreneurs lose touch with their why. The fire that once lit the journey dims under spreadsheets, metrics, and market demands. To realign, go back to the original spark, the reason you started when no one else believed in you. That's your emotional North Star. Revisit it often. Let it remind you that your business is not just a mechanism for profit, but a medium for expression. Because when your business mirrors your internal values, it becomes more than an enterprise. It becomes an ecosystem of meaning. The cost of misalignment. Let's be brutally honest. Running a business out of alignment doesn't just drain your energy, it distorts your decisions. When your internal compass points to fear, you start chasing safety instead of opportunity. When it points to validation, you say yes to the wrong clients, the wrong projects, the wrong partnerships. Misalignment creates noise, mental, emotional, and operational. You'll find yourself constantly reacting instead of creating, fixing instead of leading. The longer you ignore it, the louder it becomes. Until burnout forces you to listen. Alignment isn't luxury, it's survival. It's how you ensure that success sustains instead of consumes you. Practices for emotional alignment. Here are 3 grounding practices that emotionally intelligent entrepreneurs use to maintain alignment. Daily check-ins. Ask yourself, what am I feeling and why? Don't judge the emotion. Decode it. Awareness precedes alignment. Alignment audit. Every week, review your top decisions. Were they made from fear, ego, or clarity? The pattern you notice reveals where you're still out of sync. Energy integrity. Track how your body feels after key meetings, calls, or creative sessions. If it drains you, it's resistance. If it energizes you, it's resonance. Let energy, not obligation, be your metric. These aren't soft tactics, they're strategic tools for protecting your most valuable business asset, your emotional equilibrium. The science of alignment, neuroscience, shows that when our values, goals, and behaviors are aligned, the brain releases dopamine and oxytocin, chemicals tied to motivation, connection, and fulfillment. That's why alignment feels good. It's not just psychological, it's physiological. When you're misaligned, cortisol and adrenaline dominate, the body's stress chemicals. You may be productive, but your nervous system is in survival mode. True high performance isn't born from tension. It's born from coherence. That's the biological signature of alignment. When your emotional state, cognitive clarity, and behavioral consistency align, creativity amplifies, relationships deepen, and resilience strengthens. You stop fighting yourself. And when you stop fighting yourself, you start flowing effortlessly toward what's meant for you. Emotional leadership in action. Let's look at how emotional alignment plays out in leadership. Imagine a founder facing a major decision, expanding the business versus consolidating for stability. An unaligned leader reacts to fear. What if I lose market share? An aligned leader consults intuition and logic. Does this expansion serve our mission or just our ego? The first decision breeds anxiety. The second breeds momentum. Emotional alignment doesn't make decisions easier. It makes them cleaner. No second guessing, no lingering tension, just clarity. Your team feels that. Clients sense that. It creates a culture of congruence, where what's said, done, and felt all match. That's how emotionally aligned businesses build trust that lasts beyond transactions. The alignment paradox. Here's the paradox. Alignment doesn't always feel comfortable. Sometimes being aligned means saying no to lucrative deals that don't resonate. Sometimes it means letting go of partnerships that once felt vital. Sometimes it means walking away from versions of yourself that no longer serve your next chapter. Alignment demands courage, the courage to choose truth over convenience. But every time you make an aligned decision, you reinforce a powerful internal message: I trust myself. And that's the foundation of unshakable emotional clarity. Closing reflection, emotional alignment isn't about chasing balance. It's about cultivating harmony, a rhythm between doing and being, striving and stillness. Because when your inner state and outer strategy match, life stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like a symphony. Your business stops being just a structure of goals and becomes a mirror of your growth. That's when success finally feels the way it's supposed to. Not pressured, not hollow, but peaceful, aligned, clear, unstoppable. So ask yourself, before every major move, does this feel like peace or like performance? Because one leads to burnout, the other leads to brilliance. And that's the difference between building a business that works and building one that feels right. Chapter 9. The Emotional Edge, Turning Triggers into Strategic Power. There's a moment in every entrepreneur's life when emotion meets decision, and the line between instinct and impulse becomes razor thin. You feel it in the tension before a deal closes, in the silence before a difficult conversation, in the pressure that builds when a project teeters between success and collapse. That edge, that emotional edge, can destroy clarity or redefine it. This is where true mastery begins, not in the absence of emotion, but in the command of it. Because when you understand your triggers, when you no longer fear them, they stop controlling your actions and start guiding your strategy. Every trigger you experience is information, a data point, a signal from your subconscious about what matters most to you. But most people never pause long enough to decode it. They react quickly, defensively, emotionally, and in doing so, they give their power away. Imagine being the person in the room who doesn't flinch when tension rises, the one who sees through the emotional chaos of others like it's written in slow motion. That's the emotional edge, the ability to interpret emotion not as a threat, but as intelligence. When someone challenges your idea, your trigger might be rejection, but underneath that, a need to be seen, to be valued, to feel competent. When you see that, you don't argue, you adjust, you clarify, you listen, you connect. Suddenly, conflict becomes collaboration. That's the shift from emotional reaction to emotional strategy. The greatest leaders in business, from Steve Jobs to Oprah Winfrey, learned this principle the hard way. They faced failure, rejection, humiliation. But instead of suppressing their emotions, they studied them. They learned their emotional algorithms. They discovered that anger could be harnessed into focus, that fear could be translated into preparation, that disappointment could become data for better strategy. You don't eliminate your triggers. You refine your response to them. When you're triggered by rejection, don't run from it. Sit with it. Ask yourself, what belief did that touch? Maybe it's the thought that I'm not enough. Maybe it's the fear of being forgotten. Whatever it is, when you name it, you tame it. You strip it of its invisible power. That's how you turn an emotional reaction into an emotional resource. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you're pitching an investor, and halfway through, they check their phone. Instantly, your heart tightens. You feel dismissed, disrespected. But what if you reframed it? What if you recognize that your trigger, that flash of irritation, was really your ego signaling a need for validation? And what if, instead of reacting, you redirected that energy into sharpening your delivery, clarifying your value, finishing strong? That's emotional alchemy, turning a moment of insecurity into a moment of influence. Business clarity isn't born from calm circumstances. It's forged in emotional turbulence. Every setback tests your internal architecture. Every trigger is a mirror reflecting how much command you truly have over yourself. To master this edge, you must train awareness like a muscle. When you feel the spark of anger, pause. When you sense defensiveness, breathe. Observe your body. Feel the shift in your heartbeat, your shoulders, your breath. That moment between trigger and reaction, that's your power gap. The space where emotion transforms into choice. And in that space, clarity lives. People who master their triggers don't just make better decisions, they become magnetic. Their composure commands attention. Their tone builds trust. Their calm creates contrast in a world addicted to noise. The truth is, emotional intelligence is the new currency of power. Data can be copied, strategies can be replicated. But emotional steadiness? That's rare. That's leadership. Every business problem you face has an emotional component. A client hesitating? Fear. A partner growing distant? Mistrust, a market shifting unexpectedly, uncertainty. When you learn to see emotion not as distraction but as diagnosis, you gain an advantage few understand. Your emotions aren't weaknesses. They're instruments, precision tools that, when tuned correctly, make you unstoppable. Think of emotion as weather and you as the pilot. You can't control the storm, but you can read it, adjust your altitude, and navigate through. That's what mastering the emotional edge looks like. It's awareness without paralysis, emotion without chaos, power without aggression. So the next time you feel that rush, that tightening in your chest, that impulse to speak before thinking, remember, you are standing at the edge of evolution. You can react or you can rise. Emotional triggers don't disappear as you grow. They evolve with you. But your mastery, your clarity, determines whether they lead to destruction or direction. This is your edge, the place where emotion becomes intelligence, and intelligence becomes influence. And when you learn to wield it with precision, something extraordinary happens. You stop being driven by emotion and start driving with it. That's the difference between reacting to life and leading it. That's the emotional edge.